You don't belong here, get out. Her words cracked through the air like a whip. The flight attendant's finger hovered inches from Marcus's chest, sharp, commanding, almost trembling with certainty. Every head in first class turned. The leather seats, the polished chrome, the stale scent of champagne, it all froze in the moment of her accusation. Marcus Carter didn't flinch. Dark t-shirt, faded jeans, calm eyes fixed straight ahead. He sat in 2 amperes, his seat, his ticket, his right. But to her, none of that mattered. Behind her, the captain stood with his arms crossed, stone-faced authority. 2 security officers lingered just past the curtain, waiting for the nod. Passengers craned their necks. A young woman clutched her phone low, the red light of her camera trembling as she whispered, "This is wrong." The attendant pressed again, louder this time. "Sir, first class is reserved. You need to move." Her voice wasn't just firm, it was final, like she'd rehearsed this scene before. Marcus breathed once, deep, steady. Silence was his answer, and somehow that silence was louder than her command. A man across the aisle muttered under his breath, "What's he even doing here dressed like that?" His seatmate nodded, smirking as if injustice had become policy. The energy shifted. What began as a boarding routine now felt like a courtroom without a judge, only accusers. And Marcus, calm, unbothered, sat as if he had all the time in the world. The attendant's hand gripped the boarding pass. A swift tear ripped it in half. Paper fell like ashes to the cabin floor. "You're done here," she snapped. Gasps, whispers, the murmur of outrage from a few rows back. A blonde passenger raised her phone higher, capturing every second. The cabin, once hushed and premium, now hummed with tension like static on a live wire. But Marcus remained anchored, steady, immovable, not because he lacked options, not because he lacked power, but because he knew patience was the sharpest blade. And before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. The attendant leaned closer, her voice low but venomous. "People like you don't fly in first class." The captain shifted, signaling the guards. The aisle narrowed, the air tightened. Passengers held their breath, waiting for Marcus to explode, to fight back, to shout, but he didn't. He just looked up at her with a quiet certainty that rattled more than rage ever could. Because this wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. The torn boarding pass hit the carpeted floor like evidence at a trial. The attendant stood taller, chest heaving as if victory was hers already. The captain stepped forward. His arms were still crossed, but his jaw was locked tight. His voice, calm but cold, carried authority the way a gavel carries finality. "Sir, comply now or you'll be escorted off this aircraft." Marcus stayed seated. No words, no movement, just silence. That silence unsettled the cabin more than shouting ever could. It stretched across the rows like a taut wire ready to snap. A passenger 2 rows back whispered, "This is ridiculous." He showed his ticket. Another leaned in, muttering, "Shh, don't get involved." But involvement had already begun. From the jump seat near the galley, a young trainee attendant shifted nervously. Her name tag read, Mia. Her eyes darted between Marcus and her senior colleague, the woman who had just ripped his ticket. Mia's lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but fear sealed them shut again. The senior attendant sneered, louder now, aware of the growing audience. "Economy is where you belong. First class is for real clients." Her words weren't instructions. They were insults dressed in uniform. Behind her, one of the security officers adjusted his belt, hand brushing the radio clipped at his waist. The unspoken threat filled the aisle. And yet Marcus didn't rise, didn't resist. He sat anchored, his calm a mirror to their chaos. Then came the sound of a phone camera clicking on. A blonde woman in row 3 angled her phone high, lens steady, voice low but certain. "This is discrimination. Everyone can see it." The captain's head snapped toward her. "Ma'am, stop recording." But she didn't lower her phone. In fact, another passenger across the aisle raised his too. Screens glowed in the dim cabin like sparks in dry grass. The tide was shifting. Witnesses were multiplying. The senior attendant's voice cut through again, sharp, rehearsed. "Sir, this is your final warning. Stand up or security will remove you." Marcus finally moved not to rise, but to lean back, folding his hands calmly in his lap. His gaze lifted to meet hers. unblinking. Certain. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice even, quiet, the kind that carried farther than shouting. The attendant scoffed. "The only mistake was letting you board." Mia flinched at the cruelty. Her fingers brushed her phone, screen lighting up. She tapped once, an audio recording began. Her heart raced, but her voice stayed trapped in her throat. "Not yet," a passenger murmured. "He's so calm. It doesn't make sense." Another whispered, "Calm is scarier than anger." The captain gave the signal. Security stepped forward. The aisle narrowed as two officers moved closer. The young woman with the phone raised it higher, her voice louder now. "He belongs here. I saw the ticket." Whispers became voices. Voices became a low rumble. A dozen witnesses, a dozen angles. The cabin, once luxury, was now a stage. Marcus didn't move. He just watched the officers approach, patience etched into every line of his face, because he knew what they didn't. The real turbulence hadn't even started yet. The aisle had never felt so narrow. Two security officers moved in, shoulders squared, steps heavy with the authority of procedure. Their presence pressed down on the cabin like extra gravity. The senior attendant blocked their path only long enough to lean closer to Marcus. Her words dripped with contempt. "People like you try this all the time. Fake passes, cheap tricks. Not today." Her tone wasn't policy. It was venom. She reached for his ID, still resting on the tray table. Marcus didn't stop her. She snatched it up, held it aloft, and scoffed. "Driver's license, please. Anyone can print one of these." Gasps rippled. A man in row 4 muttered, "That's illegal. She can't just take it." His neighbor hissed back, "Shut up. They'll throw you off too." The ID dangled in her grip like stolen evidence. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she tossed it onto the floor beside the torn boarding pass. Paper and plastic scattered across the carpet like discarded dignity. Marcus remained still, unmoved, anchored in silence. The captain exhaled through his nose, frustration mounting. "Enough. Officers, remove him now." One officer reached for Marcus's arm. The young trainee Mia jerked upright from her jump seat, her voice cracking but clear. "Wait." His pass scanned green. I saw it. The cabin froze. Every passenger who had been whispering now turned. Eyes darted between Mia and the senior attendant. The attendant's reply was sharp, furious. "Sit down, trainee. This isn't your place." But the words came too late. Mia had already tapped her phone. The soft red glow of her recording app burned like a flare in the dark. She spoke again, stronger this time. "He belongs here, and I have proof." The murmurs swelled into a low roar. Phones tilted higher. One passenger in row 3 uploaded live, whispering into her mic, "They're trying to throw him out. He showed his ticket. We're watching this unfold in real time." The senior attendant's face flushed red, but she doubled down. "He's a fraud. He forged everything. People like him don't belong in first class." That phrase, "people like him," cracked the air. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was naked. The officer's hand still hovered inches from Marcus's sleeve, but he hesitated now, unsettled by the growing chorus of voices. From the back, a man's voice rang out, "This is wrong. He's not resisting. He's not loud. He's not a threat." Another joined, "You're targeting him because of how he looks." The cabin had shifted. It was no longer silent witnesses. It was witnesses finding their voice. Marcus finally lifted his gaze from the floor, meeting the captain's eyes. His tone was even unshaken. "Touch me again, and you'll regret it. Not because I'll shout, not because I'll fight, but because the truth doesn't need volume, it only needs witnesses." The words landed heavy, not defiance, not threat, a verdict. And in that instant, the real turbulence began not from the skies above, but from the storm unraveling inside Horizon Airlines' first-class cabin. The silence after Marcus's words was electric, not empty, charged. A dozen phones hovered in the air, recording. Security officers shifted uneasily, waiting for the captain's nod. The senior attendant fumed, cheeks red, hands trembling around her tablet. Marcus finally moved, slowly, deliberately. He reached into his pocket and drew out a phone of his own. The cabin leaned in as though a verdict was about to be read. He pressed one button. A soft chime answered in his ear. "Rachel," he said evenly. "Yes, Mr. Carter," a crisp voice replied. "Calm, efficient, ready." The senior attendant scoffed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, please. Calling your friend isn't going to save you." Marcus didn't look at her. His gaze stayed forward. "Log this incident. Timestamp every word. Alert the board. Tell them Horizon Airlines has a situation in progress." The cabin stirred. Whispers rose. Board. Which board? The words floated row to row, confusion mixing with suspicion. Rachel's reply was firm, undeniable. Already done. Incident log activated. The directors will see everything. The captain's composure cracked. His voice rose. Sir, put the phone away. This is a federal flight. You do not... Marcus raised his hand slightly. Not to silence him, but to cut through the noise. No, what you don't understand is that this plane doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people who pay your salary, and one of those people is on this call right now. The words hit like turbulence. Passengers gasped. A man whispered to his seatmate, "Is he serious? Who is this guy?" The blonde woman with the phone said it louder this time. "I think I know that name, Carter. He's not just some passenger." The senior attendant laughed, brittle and desperate. "He's bluffing. He printed a fake ticket, and now he's spinning a story. Don't fall for it." But Mia stepped forward, voice steadying with courage. "It's not fake. I scanned his ticket myself. It was valid. You tore it up." Her words cut deeper than any accusation. The cabin buzzed with approval, murmurs swelling into agreement. The captain barked, "Trainees don't get to weigh in." But his voice no longer carried the same authority. It wavered, cracked around the edges. Marcus spoke again, calm as stone. "Rachel, confirm board presence." "Yes, sir," Rachel replied instantly. "All 3 members online. Compliance is monitoring live. Legal is reviewing audio. Your instructions?" The color drained from the senior attendant's face. The captain's lips tightened as if biting back realization. Marcus leaned back in his seat, folding his hands once more. His eyes swept the cabin, not angry, not pleading, but absolute. "My instructions are simple. Let them keep talking. The board needs to hear exactly how Horizon treats its paying customers." Phones hovered higher. Passengers exchanged wide-eyed looks. Security hesitated in the aisle. The cabin, once governed by crew authority, now pulsed with the energy of a courtroom. And in the center sat Marcus Carter, calm as ever, quietly turning their performance into evidence. The cabin was no longer a sanctuary of quiet luxury. It had become a stage, and the audience was restless. Phones hovered like lanterns, catching every twitch of expression, every word dripping from the crew. A woman in row 3 finally stood. Emma Larson, mid-30s, traveling alone. Her voice trembled but carried enough strength to pierce the stale air. "I saw it. His ticket was valid. You tore it up. That's not procedure, it's prejudice." The captain snapped his head toward her. "Ma'am, sit down immediately or you'll be removed as well." But Emma didn't sit. She lifted her phone higher. "No. The world is going to see this." Her defiance rippled. In row 4, Michael Grant, a businessman with salt and pepper hair, leaned forward. "She's right, this isn't policy. This is bias." The senior attendant's jaw tightened. "Passengers interfering will face legal consequences." Michael chuckled darkly, unshaken. "Funny, because what I see is you interfering with a paying customer." The murmurs swelled, no longer whispers but threads of outrage weaving together. One voice shouted from the back, "Leave him alone. He's done nothing wrong." Another echoed, "You can't drag someone out just because you don't like his clothes." Security shifted uneasily, eyes darting between the crew and the growing resistance. Authority was slipping. Meanwhile, Mia's phone still glowed with a red recording light. She held it close to her chest, quiet but unshakable now. When the senior attendant turned to glare at her, Mia spoke with more conviction than before. "You deleted his name from the system. I watched you, and I have it recorded." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Emma turned her phone toward Mia, capturing her words. "You all heard that, right?" The captain barked, "Trainee, you're finished. Hand over that phone." But the demand only deepened the suspicion in the room. A passenger whispered into his live stream, "She just admitted the system was tampered with. This is bigger than one seat. This is corporate fraud." Notifications buzzed. Screens lit up. A hashtag began to form number, Horizon Exposed. Within seconds, likes and comments surged in real time across feeds. The senior attendant's confidence faltered. Her voice grew shrill. "None of this will matter. Policy is policy. He doesn't belong here." Marcus finally spoke again, his voice low but cutting through the noise like steel. "You keep saying policy, but what you mean is prejudice, and that difference is going to cost you." The room stilled. The weight of his words settled heavy over every seat. Emma lowered her phone slightly, her voice breaking with emotion. 20 years ago, my brother was thrown off a flight for the same reason. Nothing changed. Until today," Michael added, louder this time. We're not sitting down. We're standing with him. And one by one, passengers rose, not all, but enough to tilt the balance. A soft uprising in a space meant for silence. The first-class cabin was no longer under crew control. It belonged to the witnesses now. The aisle was no longer just an aisle. It was a front line. On one side, crew in crisp uniforms clinging to their authority. On the other, passengers, phones raised, voices united, refusing to be silent. The captain's composure snapped. His voice rose above the cabin hum, sharp as static over a failing radio. This is a federal offense. This man is obstructing flight operations. He's a threat. The words landed like stones, but not with the weight he intended. Passengers murmured, incredulous. Emma shouted back before she could stop herself. He hasn't done anything. He sat in his seat and you tore up his ticket. Michael added, his phone still recording, if anyone's obstructing this flight, it's you. The senior attendant's face was flushed now, but she wasn't backing down. She stepped closer, venom lacing every syllable. Passengers like him dressed like that always think they can sneak in. It's fraud, plain and simple. The phrase passengers like him echoed through the cabin, louder than the engines outside. A collective gasp swept the rows. A teenage boy whispered to his mother, "Did she really just say that?" His mother nodded grimly, squeezing his hand. Mia, trembling but resolute, raised her voice again. I scanned his ticket. It was valid. You're lying, and you know it. The captain wheeled on her, fury flashing in his eyes. You're done. Hand in your badge after this flight. But Mia didn't retreat. She held her phone higher, its recording light glowing like a beacon. Then the board can fire me, but they'll hear everything. Gasps again. Passengers clapped softly, murmurs shifting into outright support. Meanwhile, the live streams were no longer quiet. Emma's video ticked past 50,000 views in minutes. Michael's feed had hashtags scrolling faster than he could read. Number Horizon exposed, number seat 2. A number bias in the skies. Comments flooded in. Unbelievable. Stay strong. Fire the crew. The senior attendant's voice cracked as she turned toward the crowd. You people don't understand. He doesn't belong here. He forged everything. Horizon Airlines doesn't tolerate imposters. Marcus finally moved. He leaned forward, voice calm but razor sharp. You keep calling me an imposter, but the only thing forged here is your professionalism. The words cut clean. The cabin erupted with murmurs, agreement, even applause. The captain's face tightened, veins at his temple visible. He turned to security. Remove him now, before this circus gets worse. The officers hesitated, not because they lacked orders, but because the aisle was no longer clear. Passengers had shifted, deliberately, creating a human wall. Phones raised, shoulders squared. Michael's voice carried above the tension. You drag him out, and you'll be on the news by midnight. Emma added, and so will your faces. Every angle, every word. The captain's authority bled out into the aisle, replaced by the rising tide of witnesses. His voice faltered for the first time. This is not how this is supposed to go. But it was. The tide had already turned. The first-class cabin wasn't just a flight anymore. It was a tribunal, and the verdict was forming fast. The air in the cabin was razor-thin, stretched tight, like glass about to shatter. Every eye was fixed on the standoff in 2 amperes. The senior attendant, red with fury, crouched to the floor and snatched up Marcus's ID where it had fallen earlier. She held it high like a trophy, voice sharp enough to cut skin. This? Worthless. Just like your so-called ticket. Before anyone could react, she bent the plastic back and forth until it cracked, the sharp snap ringing across first class. Gasps erupted. A woman in row 2 clutched her pearls. Michael shouted, "That's destruction of property." The captain didn't flinch. Instead, he doubled down, voice booming. "Sir, you are in violation of FAA regulations. You are under suspicion of fraud. Security, remove him immediately." One of the officers stepped forward, hand outstretched, fingers brushing the sleeve of Marcus's t-shirt. The contact was small, but the symbolism was enormous. A gasp rippled through the cabin. Phones tilted higher, catching every second. Marcus didn't resist. He didn't flinch. His voice, calm as stone, carried the weight of something far greater than authority. "You just crossed the line." The senior attendant sneered, words dripping like poison. "You don't belong here. You never did. Not in those clothes. Not with that face. Not in first class." The phrase detonated like thunder. Passengers erupted, some shouting, "That's racist!" Others murmuring in disbelief. Emma's voice cracked as she cried out, "You said it out loud! Everyone heard you!" Mia stepped fully into the aisle now, trembling but fierce. She raised her phone so the recording light was visible to all. She deleted his name from the system. She just destroyed his ID, and I recorded every word, every single word. The senior attendant lunged toward her, hand outstretched for the phone, but Emma stepped in front, blocking her with a sharp shove of her arm. "You're not taking her phone, not today." Chows rippled. Passengers stood, forming a barrier. The officers hesitated, caught between orders and the crowd swelling against them. Marcus finally rose, not to fight, not to flee, but to stand. His full height shifted the air, calm, commanding, unshaken. "You accused me. You humiliated me. You destroyed my property, and you did it all in front of witnesses." The captain barked, "Sit down now or face arrest." Marcus's eyes locked on his, unwavering. "If you put your hands on me again, it won't be arrest you'll face. It will be unemployment." The cabin went silent. Phones hovered, recording every syllable. The balance of power had tipped, and everyone knew it. The storm was no longer approaching. It was here, breaking across the aisle of first class, like a verdict waiting to be delivered. Marcus stood tall in the narrow aisle, calm radiating off him like heat from steel. The two officers froze mid-motion, as if some invisible command had stalled them. The senior attendant still clutched the snapped pieces of his ID, her hand trembling now, not with power but with exposure. He lifted his phone again, pressed one button. A voice answered instantly. "Rachel, confirm recording." Her tone was crisp, professional, unwavering. "Recording active, live feed secured. The board is watching in real time." A ripple cut through the passengers. "The board?" Whispers darted like sparks. Phones kept filming, capturing not only Marcus but the stunned crew. Marcus's voice was measured, deliberate. "Mark the timestamp. Unlawful destruction of passenger ID, racial discrimination on record, attempted removal without cause." The senior attendant's face drained of color. She stammered, "He's bluffing. He's making this up." Rachel's reply came like a blade through the cabin speaker. "Noted. Evidence secured. Mr. Carter, would you like me to notify legal?" Gasps. Passengers leaned in. Michael muttered, "He's not bluffing." Marcus's eyes never left the cap. "Yes. Notify legal. And compliance. Tell them Horizon Airlines has a crew out of control on Flight 271. The captain's jaw clenched, his authority slipping through his teeth. "Enough. You don't have the right to—" Marcus cut him off, voice steady, not raised but absolute. "I have every right, because I am not just a passenger. I am Marcus Carter, CEO, and this airline is my responsibility." The words landed like a thunderclap. The cabin erupted gasps, murmurs, exclamations. Emma covered her mouth. Mia's eyes widened, recording still rolling. Michael whispered, "Holy, he's the one. He owns the airline." The senior attendant stumbled back a step, denial spilling from her lips. "No, that's impossible. He's lying." But Marcus didn't flinch. He looked past her, scanning the cabin of witnesses. "Rachel, escalate. Freeze access for this flight crew. Effective immediately." Rachel's voice came clear, undeniable. "Understood. Executing protocol." The captain glanced down at his tablet. The screen blinked red. A warning. Access revoked. System locked. His breath caught in his throat. The officers exchanged nervous glances, suddenly unsure whose orders still held weight. Marcus turned slightly, addressing the passengers now. "You've all seen what happened. You've recorded it. Let it stand as proof. Silence doesn't equal weakness. Patience doesn't equal submission." Phones captured every word, every angle. The tide was irreversible now. The senior attendant's voice broke, shrill, desperate. "You can't do this." Marcus's reply was a quiet hammer. "I already have." The first-class cabin was no longer their domain. It belonged to Marcus Carter and to every witness who had seen justice begin to turn. For a moment, the cabin was nothing but silence. Not the peaceful kind. This silence was jagged, heavy, suffocating. The captain's tablet flashed again. System access denied. Credentials expired. His badge vibrated at his hip, a red light blinking where once it had glowed green. His face drained of its practiced authority. The senior attendant clutched the broken ID pieces in her hand, her knuckles white. This is some kind of trick." He hacked the system. But Marcus stood firm, his voice calm, unshakable. "No trick, no hack. Just truth. He turned slowly, letting his gaze sweep the cabin, letting every camera lock onto him. His words fell with the weight of a verdict. My name is Marcus Carter, Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Airlines. I don't just fly this plane, I run the company that owns it. The cabin exploded. Gasps, shouts, murmurs layered over each other. Emma covered her mouth with both hands. Michael let out a stunned laugh. Phones wavered as passengers struggled to steady their grip while filming. Mia's voice rang out, clear and young but resolute. I told you his ticket was valid. He's the CEO. You tore up the boarding pass of your own boss. The senior attendant shook her head violently, denial spilling from her lips. No, this isn't real. He's dressed like... Marcus cut her off, voice steel wrapped in velvet. Like a man who doesn't need to prove himself to you. You mistook clothing for class. That's your mistake. And your last one. Oh. The captain's shoulders slumped, the weight of realization pressing down. His authority had evaporated, exposed under the glare of 100 phones. He tried one last feeble defense. You could have identified yourself earlier. This chaos is your fault. Marcus's eyes locked on him, unblinking. Respect should never depend on recognition. Power should never be the price of dignity. If the only way you treat someone as human is when they outrank you, then you were never fit to wear that uniform. The words sliced through the cabin like a blade. Passengers erupted into applause. Some stood clapping. Others shouted, "Say it again!" Michael leaned toward his camera, whispering to thousands watching live. He's not bluffing. He's the CEO. We just watched the crew humiliate their own boss. Emma's voice broke as she cried out, "This is history. I can't believe I'm seeing this." The senior attendant's hand shook so badly the plastic pieces of the ID clattered to the carpet. Her eyes darted between Marcus and the passengers, her world collapsing in real time. Marcus didn't move closer. He didn't need to. His presence filled the cabin. You tried to erase me in front of witnesses. Instead, you've erased yourselves. Careers don't survive moments like this. The silence that followed was deafening, not resistance surrender. For the first time, the crew realized they were no longer in control. They were defendants in a courtroom they never knew existed. And the judge was already delivering the sentence. The cabin erupted like a storm finally breaking. Passengers clapped. Some rose to their feet, the sound rolling down the aisle like thunder in a chamber built for silence. Phones hovered high, their screens glowing, streaming, documenting. The world outside the plane was already watching. The captain staggered back a step, his authority dissolving under the weight of revelation. His badge buzzed again, red, locked out. He tapped his tablet furiously, but every attempt returned the same line. Access revoked. His hands trembled. The senior attendant crumbled into the corner of the galley, color draining from her face. This can't be happening," she whispered, as if denial could undo the evidence flooding every feed. Mia, still holding her phone high, spoke with more certainty now. You tore up his pass. You broke his ID. You called him a fraud in front of everyone, and he's your CEO. The truth was undeniable, replaying already in clips, rewinding on screens, going viral before their very eyes. A hashtag scrolled across Emma's phone. Number CEON2A. Michael's live counter ticked past 200,000 viewers. The officers shifted uncomfortably, caught in the middle of a mutiny they hadn't signed up for. One whispered to the other, "We can't touch him. Not now." The other nodded, stepping back a pace, palms raised in silent retreat. Marcus didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His stillness was heavier than their panic. "This," he said evenly, "is the cost of arrogance. You thought you were untouchable, but you were always accountable." Emma's voice rang out from row 3. "You've shown us all what power really looks like. Calm, measured, fair." Passengers cheered. Applause swelled. The first-class cabin, once a theater of humiliation, had become an arena of vindication. The senior attendant's knees buckled. She slumped into a seat meant for paying customers, her eyes glassy, her breath shallow. I didn't know," she muttered weakly. Marcus's gaze landed on her, not cruel but immovable. "That's the problem. You never asked. You judged. And today, judgment came back to you." The captain's composure collapsed. He lowered his head, voice hoarse, broken. "Sir, I had no idea. If I'd known..." Marcus cut him off, his tone sharper than any outburst. "You shouldn't need to know someone's title to treat them with dignity." A wave of cheers roared through the cabin. The blonde passenger shouted into her live stream, "He said it! Replay that line!" Comments flooded instantly. Chills. History in the making. Ground them all. Mia's eyes shimmered, not with fear now, but with pride. She had chosen the right side of history, and everyone knew it. The crew had nothing left. Their authority had drained away, leaving only shame and silence. And in that silence, one truth thundered. Marcus Carter wasn't just another passenger. He was the sky they flew in. The applause faded into a restless hush, a silence hungry for justice. Every camera was fixed on Marcus. The crew stood like defendants waiting for their sentence. Marcus raised his phone once more. His voice was calm, deliberate, but it carried the weight of a gavel. "Rachel, confirm compliance connection." Her reply came, crisp and immediate. "Confirmed. Compliance, legal, and board members are all live on this call. Standing by." The captain's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. The senior attendant's eyes darted to the carpet, as if she could sink through it and vanish. Marcus's words cut through the cabin. "Effective immediately. Suspend the captain of Flight 271. Suspend the lead attendant. Suspend every officer complicit in this incident. Revoke their access badges. Lock them out of the system." Rachel's voice echoed through the phone, steady and final. "Orders acknowledged. Executing now." At that moment, the captain's badge buzzed violently at his hip, then went dark. The attendant's tablets froze, the Horizon logo replaced with a stark message, "Access revoked. Contact corporate." Gasps rippled across the cabin. Emma covered her mouth, tears welling. Michael laughed out loud, shaking his head in disbelief. He did it. He actually did it right here. The officers, once towering figures in the aisle, stepped back quickly, palms raised. Their badges blinked red, too. One muttered, "We're locked out. We're done." Phones captured every reaction, the pale faces of the crew, the wide eyes of passengers, the quiet power of Marcus standing unwavering in the center of it all. The senior attendant broke first. She collapsed into an empty seat, head in her hands. Her voice was a hoarse whisper. "My career, it's over." Marcus looked at her, his tone even but merciless. "No, it ended the moment you chose prejudice over professionalism." The captain tried to muster dignity, his voice cracking. "Mr. Carter, please, consider—" Marcus's gaze sliced through him. "You had your chance to consider. You chose humiliation. Now you face consequence." The passengers erupted into applause again, louder this time, a wave of vindication crashing through the cabin. Phones swung to capture Marcus's face, to immortalize the moment justice didn't wait for landing. Emma shouted above the noise, "This is history! He fired them right here in front of us!" Mia's recording light still glowed. Her voice trembled, but with awe this time. "I just watched the CEO dismantle his own crew in real time." Marcus lowered his phone, folding his hands calmly once more. His eyes swept the cabin, taking in every witness, every camera. Justice doesn't need shouting. It needs action, and action was taken. The crew stood hollow, stripped of power, stripped of authority. The cabin no longer belonged to them. It belonged to Marcus Carter, and to the passengers who had just watched dignity rise higher than altitude. The cabin had transformed. What began as a theater of humiliation was now a courtroom of justice, and Marcus stood at its center, calm, steady, untouchable. The crew lingered in the galley like shadows, stripped of authority, badges dead, uniforms nothing more than fabric now. Passengers filled the silence with applause, cheers, even tears. Phones streamed endlessly, broadcasting not just a scandal but a reckoning. Marcus took one last breath, then spoke not just to the cabin, but to the thousands already watching online, and the millions who would see it later. His voice was low, deliberate, every syllable etched into memory. "You mistook silence for submission. That was your last mistake. Power doesn't need to shout, it proves itself." The words dropped like a hammer, the final gavel in a trial everyone had just witnessed. Applause erupted again, thunderous this time, rolling from front to back. Emma clapped with tears in her eyes. Michael raised his phone and said into his live stream, "This is what real leadership looks like." Mia lowered her phone, her recording finished, her voice soft but certain. "I'll never forget this day." Marcus's gaze swept the cabin one final time. Not a look of triumph, something deeper, a reminder. Dignity should never depend on a uniform. Respect should never depend on a title. And justice doesn't wait for landing, it begins the moment someone stands. The passengers rose to their feet, First class had never seen applause like this. Not for celebrities, not for politicians, only for the quiet strength of a man who turned humiliation into judgment. The senior attendant slumped in silence, face buried in her hands. The captain stared blankly at the dead screen in his lap. Their fall was complete, witnessed by every seat, every phone, every corner of the internet. Marcus sat back down in 2 amperes, calm as if the storm had never touched him. He folded his hands, leaned against the headrest, and closed his eyes. For him, it was over. For the world, it had just begun. Emma leaned toward her camera, whispering into her stream. History didn't happen in a courtroom today. It happened in first class. The engines hummed outside. The plane had not yet left the ground, but in that cabin, something greater had taken flight. Marcus Carter didn't need to say another word. His silence spoke louder than any shout ever could. And with that, justice soared.